Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Matt. And I thought I would do today to do a quick video here is to talk about that newly uncovered audio tape about the Beatles, one of their final meetings anyway, at 3 Savile Road, Apple Studios in London, back on September 8th, 1969. This has been big news in the Beatles world as far as people have been talking about it in their videos. It's been on news releases. People have made videos about it. So I thought I'd offer my little 2 cents and maybe get some of your thoughts about it, see what you think about this newly uncovered audio tape. It seems to be that Mark Lewison, the well-known author and certainly expert in the world of Beatles, talked about it in an interview recently with a media outlet, and he shed some light on this tape, or this audio tape, I should say. And in it, it kind of alluded to the fact that it was giving proof that the Beatles didn't want Abbey Road to be their final album. That this news that we've always known our whole lives, pretty much, that the Beatles were done. You know, that the dissension and the bad times that were happening during the Get Back or Let It Be sessions, they were able to pull it together one final time during the spring and early summer of 1969 to do Abbey Road with George Martin and do a proper Beatles album, and that's been always the history of it. But that they knew that that was the end, that John Lennon had wanted out for several years, especially since he had met Yoko in 1966, and that this was the end. That was going to be the end. Abbey Road was it. Well, according to this audio tape that was recorded 50 years ago this week, just about 2 weeks before the Abbey Road album was released, all three of them meet at 3 Savile Row, where they did the famous rooftop concert. Ringo wasn't there because he was in the hospital with an ailment or an illness at the time. And on this tape, apparently, based, again, we don't have all the information on it. We're getting like third hand from Mark Lewison, who said he heard the tape, but you know, you've got to figure Mark Lewison is a pretty reliable source, and that he's not going to put out some garbage or baloney material unless I just don't see him doing that. So, according to this on the tape recorder, John Lennon can be heard saying that Ringo, we're doing this tape for you. We're recording this so you can hear what we're discussing, since Ringo couldn't be there, and they're talking about plans to make another LP, a follow-up to Abbey Road. And I guess in this tape, John is taking the lead, which again seems very surprising, like that John's, really seems to be the one that's behind this and taking the lead in the discussions about it. Because, again, if I'm wrong, folks, but my impression as a Beatle fan my whole life was that John Lennon was just, after 66 or so, that I think he even said in interviews he was looking for ways to get out. Or at least that's my understanding of it, is once he met Yoko and time started to go by and he got more involved with her, and I was just always in the impression that the closer it got to 1970, the more John wanted out of the Beatles, and he was just looking for an excuse or a way to do that. But when you hear what is on this tape, it kind of changes all that a little bit. It kind of makes it seem like John was still into it up until almost the bitter end. He's talking about, or John's proposing an offer like, okay, who can offer some songs here that could be a potential single for the next LP? And he also is suggesting that himself, Paul, and George could get 4 songs each, and that Ringo could possibly get 2 if he wants them, and that we're going to move on here. We're going to come up with another album. Which kind of blows my mind, because, like I said, it's always been previous thought that John was integral to the breakup of the Beatles. And in this case, it seems this tape is alluding to the fact that he wasn't. That up until September 8th, at least 1969, John was still talking a future for the Beatles. Now, what happened between this meeting and I think it was later in the fall, didn't he contact Paul and say something like, I want a divorce, or something like that? Or one of the subsequent meetings he said that, I want a divorce, I want out. So what changed? If he's talking here on September 8th, like, I want to be in the band, I want to, let's talk about new singles, the next album, George is going to get so many songs. You're going to get so, if he's talking that way and then within a couple of months he's looking for a divorce, what changed that? Why did it flip so much? And why does history show that that's what he wanted all along? And according to this tape, that doesn't sound like what he wanted all along. Now, when John suggests that they all share songwriting duties on the next album, I gotta say, Paul comes across, based on what we're hearing, again, we haven't heard the tape and we don't know everything that's on the tape, but Paul comes across as kind of a jerk, I think, in when you hear what's on this tape, because John suggests that he, George, and Paul all get 4 songs each, and Paul doesn't seem happy about George getting equal standing. He almost seems a little bit taken aback by it, and there's a quote about Paul from this tape saying, "Well, I thought until this album," meaning Abbey Road, "that George's songs weren't that good." He says something along those lines, and I guess George replies to him, again, paraphrasing. I don't know, I didn't hear the tape myself, but George says, "Well, that's a matter of taste, because all down the line, people have liked my songs." So they seem to have a little banter back and forth about Paul being unhappy with George getting equal time, and George kind of defending himself and saying, "Hey, I'm a pretty good songwriter." So I thought that was kind of telling, that Paul kind of comes off as kind of a little bit of a baby, a little bit of a crybaby on the tape, that he's complaining about George a little bit. But it seems like they were in a positive frame of mind up until this point, that they had, as we know, after the whole debacle with Get Back and Let It Be, they pulled it together again and seemed to be in good spirits during the recording of Abbey Road, and seemed to have a great time and working with George Martin again like the old days. And all that positiveness just seemed to come out in that great triumphant album, Abbey Road, which we're getting ready in a couple of weeks to get the 50th anniversary releases, and everybody's excited about that for sure. But this tape is kind of telling, because me as an individual, as a young boy growing up in the 60s and into the 70s, I was just always under the impression that Paul was the rah-rah guy trying to keep them together. Let's, all for one, one for all. Let's do another show or a tour. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. And maybe he was, I'm not saying he wasn't, but I was always under the impression that he was the sole guy behind the push to keep the Beatles together, and that, John was the sullen one. He was the one that was with Yoko now, and I don't care about the Beatles anymore, and, to heck with the Beatles, I'm out of here, I'm looking for a way out of this. And, George had some discontent and all that stuff. But, you listen to this tape, and they're all meeting at Apple and talking about the future, about a potential single for the next album, and songs, and who's going to do what, and bantering back and forth about it. And it just makes me go, wow, what happened then? What happened after September of '69 that really changed the course of history? That at some point John said, "I want out," and then, of course, we know what happened in the spring of '70. Paul got tired of waiting for a big announcement or something, and he went off and put his big announcement into his solo album leaflet there, and caused all kind of discontent with John and then the rest of the band for doing that. We know the history, but it just at a brief moment in early September of '69, the Beatles, or 3 of them anyway, met and were talking about the future. What happened after that date, September 8th, we may never know. Maybe we will know, or maybe people can speculate, or maybe we have some facts that are coming up that will shed more light on what happened at this meeting or subsequent meetings. I'm not even sure how many more times they met after this, but I just found it very interesting. And I said, I just want to come on and see what you all think about this. What do you think about this new audio tape that's been released? What do you think about John being talking positive about the future? What do you think about John suggesting equal time for George, and Paul trying to put the kibosh on it and say, I don't know about that. I don't know if George should get equal footing, Interesting stuff. And you just wonder what changed after September 8th, 1969. And history was written, and it's over and done, but what could have been, right? What if? What if there were different things that happened at that meeting, and the Beatles decided to take that next step forward? We may never know. But anyway, I just thought I'd get your thoughts about it. It definitely piqued my interest and curiosity, and got me thinking about the what ifs. So what do you all think? Thanks again, folks. God bless. Take care.